Shabbos Daf Tzadik Vav. Today's synopsis email comes from David Mishulam Weiss from Muncie. And he writes, my highest compliments to you on this wonderful shir that you share with me and thousands of others daily. It really enhances my learning, is an excellent review of the Daf. Thank you, David Mishulam. Also, a quick shout out to our great friend, Shlomi Klein from Crown Heights. The Gemara tells us that in order for a kli, a flower pot, to be considered attached to the ground, it must nourish from the ground. What size hole does this flower pot must have in order to be considered attached to the ground? Machlokes, Rabbi Yossi bar Avin and Rabbi Yossi bar Zavda. The Gemara is not sure exactly who says what. It's either one says the size of a pomegranate, which is very large, and the other one says the size of a small root. It's mikatzel katza, from side to side. They're two very different shiurim. And the way to remember these two very interesting shiurim is the famous line, Echad hamarba v'echad hamamet, u'bilvad sheyichaven li b'lashamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't care whether you buy an expensive carbon or a cheap bowl of flour, as long as you have the right intent. Rebbe Eliezer holds that when it comes to earthenware, once the kli has a hole the size of an olive, it's no longer mekabel tum, it's not considered a kli, even if you designate it and say, I want it to remain a kli and I want it to hold pomegranates. Unlike Rava yesterday, who says that typically the kli is batal, but if you have the right designation for pomegranates, it will remain a kli. And with that we finish Perek Hamatzniya, unbelievable, one more Perek down and many more to go. Perek HaZoyrek, dealing with throwing items, continuing with the theme of Hitzah, taking items out from one Rishus to another Rishus. If you throw from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, or from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, you are Chayiv. If you go from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid, and there's a Rishus HaRabim between, pretend you're throwing from one side of the street, from your house to your neighbor's house across the street, you are Potter according to everybody. Why? Because in the Mishkan they never threw or passed from one side of Rishus HaYachid to the other. The way it worked is they would pull up with 4 wagons. 2 wagons were attached to each other and the other 2 attached to each other, and they would pull up to the Mishkan. Let's call set number 1 northbound and set number 2 on another lane going southbound. They would pass the beams onto the first wagon and to the back of the wagon. They would go from the front to the back, but never from the wagon on the northbound to the wagon to the southbound. Therefore, if you're going to pass from a porch to another porch on the same side of the street, you are chayav, because that's how they did it in the Mishkan. But if you're going to pass from one side of the street across to the other side of the street, you are potter. According to Chachamim, they never threw in the Mishkan. It would be very difficult to throw these beams, which might have weighed anywhere between 1 ton to 4 tons, according to Rabbi Galinsky, extremely heavy. And it wasn't kavadik, according to another Pshat in Rashi. And on Daf Daladam and Beis Rashi says they didn't throw because they were concerned to ruin these beams that were covered in gold. So there's no throwing going on. According to Rabbi Kiva, it's asur to throw on Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu commanded Klal Yisrael to stop bringing items from their Rishus HaYachid, from there where they lived was Rishus HaYachid, to his camp, which was considered Rishus HaRabim. And there's a Gzeir Shava from what Moshe Rabbeinu said to Yom Kippur, just like Yom Kippur, the actual day is asur to do malacha, so too that day Shabbos was asur to bring the items, not because he had too much, but it was asur to bring. And logically, we say, since it's asur to go in this direction, from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, it's also asur to go from Rishus HaRabim back to Rishus HaYachid. However, that's called a tolda. The Av, the main halacha, the main isser, is going from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. So, if a person committed these 2 acts in one awareness, he did Haitzah, he went from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, he did Achnasa from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, he's only chayiv 1 carbon, because they're both in the same category. One is the Av, the category, and one is the Talda, the subcategory. If you do an Av and a Talda, you only bring 1 carbon. If you were to do 2 separate malachas, like Haitzah, bringing wood in to Rishus HaRabim, and then Boirer, you would be chayiv 2 karbanos, even if it was in one awareness. However, according to Rebbe Eliezer, who says that if you do an Av and a Talda, you're chayiv 2 karbanos, so if you do Haitzah and Achnasa, you're chayiv 2 karbanos. The difference between an Av and a Talda is that the Av was what they did in the Mishkan, and it was an important melacha, versus the Talda, that which wasn't done in the Mishkan. That's why it's called a Talda. If somebody throws an item in Rishus HaRabim and it sticks to the wall, like wet toilet paper or a juicy fig, if the wall where it's stuck to is above 10 tfachim, it's no longer Rishus HaRabim, and it's not Rishus HaYachid because Rishus HaYachid has to have a place. It has to have square tfachim, and this is on the vertical. If it landed on top of the wall, that would be a different story. So therefore, it's as if it landed in mid-ear, and he's potter. However, if he threw it and it landed below 10 tvachim is considered part of Rishus HaRabim, and therefore, he is chayiv. Where do we see the concept of throwing in the Mishkan? There wasn't any throwing in the Mishkan, says the Gemara. Therefore, we must say that if the throwing from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim is halacha l'Moshe Messinai. You might say, well, they did throw in the Mishkan. They threw the buchyar. That's the device, the barber's, the weaver's bob, or the shuttle that goes. It has the Erev thread, and it goes through the chassis back and forth, and they would throw it. But you would hold on to the thread. But perhaps it was the end of the thread. So he threw it 4 amas. Well, the actual loom is considered a makam p'tur, not a Rishus HaRabim. Therefore, there's no raya from there. Perhaps you'll say that as they were using the loom, one would borrow from the other and say, hey, pass me the buchyar, pass me a needle. And they would toss each other things. So you see, there was tossing. That can't be either because everyone in the Mishkan had their own buchyar and needle. Everybody had their own kalim, as the pasuk says. There's a machlokes. In this week's parsha, we're going to be learning about the mekoshesh eitzim. What exactly did the mekoshesh do? 3-way machlokes. One man Amar says, Shmuel says, he was over an eitzah. He walked in Rishus HaRabim 4 amas with the wood. The Brisa says he cut the wood, toilish. And Rav Acha says he piled up the wood. He was ma'amer. What is the difference? What he did? The difference is, if we know what he did, then we know in Megillas Starim it says there was 1 out of 39 malachas you don't get a punishment. Now we know, according to whatever the Manda Amr, whatever you hold, if let's say you hold the Mekoshesh did ma'amer, you know for sure it's not ma'amer. Ma'amer there is einish. Toilish is for sure an einish. Who was the Mekoshesh? Rebbe Akiva says the Mekoshesh was Tzlavchad. Rebbe Yehuda ben Meseira did not like that. He said, Mimanashach. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't put it in the Torah, he wanted it hidden. Why are you telling people about it? And if you are wrong, then you're going to get an einish for being Moitzi Laz on Tzlavchad. Similarly, we see by Aaron and Miriam. It says in the pasuk, Bam. Says Rebbe Akiva, they both got tzaras. Says Rebbe Yehuda, you have no right telling Klal Yisrael that Aaron HaKohen got tzaras. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it hidden. And if you were wrong, you're Moitzi Laz. So what does he do with the word Bam? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him an azifa, he gave Aaron Musar. But he never got tzaras. Have a wonderful day.